Hi there, my name is Pascal. I'm from Western Canoe and Kayak, and today I want to talk about sort of the differences between recreational and touring kayak. So here I've got a recreational kayak on my right and a light touring kayak on my left. They're both 12 feet or thereabouts, but they do have some pretty significant differences. First one that I really want to stress is a recreational kayak very infrequently will have bulkheads at the front and back of the boat. In most cases, it'll just have a bulkhead at the rear, whereas a touring kayak will, with very few exceptions, have both a bulkhead at the front and the back. What a bulkhead provides is a captive space of air so that if you flip your boat and you swamp it full of water, it'll still stay afloat. In the case of a recreational kayak, there's going to be a very large amount of water that floods most of the boat. It'll still float, but you won't really be able to get back in and paddle it to shore. You'll swim and tow it behind you. Because of that, you're not going to want to go farther from shore than you can comfortably swim in the event of an out-of-boat experience. In a touring kayak, you've got a large amount of buoyancy, both at the front and in the rear, and that gives you the opportunity to get back in on the water, pump the water out, and carry on paddling. Now there are some other differences, principally comfort. So with a recreational kayak, you typically have a very large cockpit opening, and that makes it a lot easier to get in and out of the boat, especially for people that have flexibility issues or are just new to the sport and feel a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of being enclosed in the same way that you'd be in a touring kayak. With the touring kayak, however, being enclosed is a feature, not a bug. You get a much smaller cockpit opening, but you'll have control with your legs where you can tuck them in under the deck and have another point of contact. So if you're in rough water, you've got a lot more engagement. That's not the case with recreational kayaks. You'll typically just have a little bit of foam on the side where you can rest your legs. You don't have the same control, but the expectation is you're going to be operating it in sheltered water where you're not going to need that level of control. There's a bit more adjustment in the seats of most recreational kayaks. In this case, you can raise your legs, you can have a bit more support, you've got a taller backrest. All this can provide a much more comfortable seating arrangement, particularly if you're just new to it. In a touring kayak, the seating's generally much more minimal, but it encourages better posture. So if you're going out for longer paddles, I would favor a more minimalist seating arrangement. With regards to storage, it's another pro for the touring kayak because the expectation is you might go out on longer days. You might want to bring stuff with you. So we've got hatches, a lot of storage space in the front and in the rear. It would be completely feasible to camp out of this for a weekend, even with it being a small boat. In the recreational kayak, you still have a decent amount of storage, perhaps not as accessible, but it's still a good amount of space. That pretty much does the broad strokes. We're going to come in and take a closer look at some of the different features up close, but that's, broadly speaking, the main differences. So with a recreational kayak, generally you've got a lot of stability. They're big, wide, comfortable things to paddle because you're probably going to be taking them out in very flat water. At least you should be. That's what they're intended for. In a touring kayak, you've got the capability, with appropriate training, to go into some rougher water, go farther from shore, and to really explore more interesting water. With that comes a few drawbacks, potentially. They're narrower, and they're generally much less stable than a recreational kayak. Now that's not to say that they're all tippy, but they're certainly tippier than a recreational boat. But that's, again, part of the design, it's intentional. You can take a long boat, tilt it up on edge on its side, and effectively shorten the water line if it's got some rock or if it's got some more shape to it. And that gives you a very nimble boat, especially when you start thinking about 17 or even 18-foot long touring kayaks. There's also some features that are perhaps less relevant in a recreational setting that are really nice to have in a touring boat. For example, this boat features a little day pod, so you can have gear that you want to have handy while still keeping it in a relatively dry area. Things like sunscreen or a phone in a case, that sort of thing. Another feature with the touring kayak that you don't really see in most recreational kayaks is the capacity to fit a spray skirt on them. So a spray skirt is a garment that's worn on you that creates a seal with the kayak. So on a recreational boat, if you're going out in flat, calm water, there's not really a need to seal yourself up. It's very unlikely that waves are going to be overtopping the kayak if you're in conditions that are appropriate for you to paddle. Whereas with touring kayak, they sit so low in the water, even in small waves, it's pretty likely that you're going to get water up in your lap. So wearing a spray skirt seals the whole cockpit and lets you go into some much more dynamic water without swamping the boat immediately. Touring boats will also generally feature perimeter lines, which give you a place to hold on to, either if you're climbing back into your boat or if you just want to grab your friend's boat so you can raft up on the water. They'll also frequently have a lot of deck bungees, which gives you places to put extras that you might be bringing, things like a marine chart or a water bottle, things like that. Some touring boats will also feature lines at the back where it can assist you to do a paddle float reentry. That's a technique that can help you get back into your boat if you have a capsize. With a recreational boat, you're not going to be doing self-rescues in the water. It's extremely unlikely that that would be successful. So they don't have anything that would help you do that. So I hope that's given you some insight as far as the differences between recreational and touring boats, and maybe gives you a bit of an idea as far as what you would want for your own boat. Some people paddle recreational boats and they're extremely happy with the comfort. Some people love the adventure and the challenge that can come along with a touring kayak. So there's pros and cons for both. Feel free to reach out with questions, comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. This has been Pascal from Western Canoe and Kayak. Have a good one.